What's up guys, it's Itzy here, welcome back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck of the Day. Today we are profiling Inzektors, a deck that finally got their new card after such a long time since we were waiting for the Win a Card project. Now the Create a Card project is finally here. Grand Creators gave us the new spell card that we were waiting for this deck, and I have to say that Konami did a pretty good job creating a new card, because when we're thinking about TCG exclusive stuff, we're always kind of skeptical because you can't blame us, right? All those TCG exclusive decks that we've gotten in the past few years, they were not the greatest things ever, so we were a bit afraid of what would come out, but actually the deck got a really good card, and I think that the deck, now that it has all of its pieces back from the ban list, they have been out for a long time now, it can actually be a really good deck, because we've seen decks like B-Trooper and all those other insect decks that can actually do some stuff. So I think Inzektors have really good potential, because they're a really good deck going first and going second because of their pop mechanic. So I'm pretty sure that this deck, in the right circumstances and in the right hands, can actually pull off quite a bit. So before we begin with the video, if you enjoyed, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming content, and now let's get to the deck profile. So starting off with the monsters, we have of course 3 copies of Inzektor Dragonfly. She's by far the best card in the deck. When you use an equip spell and then it's destroyed or sent to the graveyard, you special summon another one from your deck. This is a not a once per turn effect, so usually you want to be using this on your own turn when you're equipping cards like Giga Mantis or Giga Weevil with Excalibur. You can pop them with Hornet and then you can special summon 2 monsters from the deck, or you can just use Ladybug if you don't have Hornet to change the level, so it will send itself to the grave to special summon another one from the deck. This card is absolutely amazing, and the reason this card is much better than before is because of the new B-Trooper support. Because when you were starting before with Centipede, you didn't really have a way to get this card onto the field after you searched it, but now you do, on top of the new spell card that came out. So this deck actually has the ability to not only search the cards it needs right now, but also get them on the field very consistently, which is really good. And this is why this deck can actually make more explosive turns, because back in the day in 2012, this deck already had a slow start and it just relied on your opponent bringing cards on the field to pop them, but now it doesn't have to rely on that alone, because you can just get a lot of monsters on the field, and the deck can actually make some pretty good boards going first. I'm going to show you in the extra deck exactly what you can summon later. Next up, we have 3 copies of Centipede. This card became much better because now it has actually better cards to search, because before you were searching like a Dragonfly for the follow-up, or if you already had the Dragonfly, you were searching a Hornet. But now, not only can you search the new spell card, but Excalibur is also a really good card to search, just because of the fact that combining it with Hornet can make you get 2 searches with Centipede, can get you 2 special summons with Dragonfly. This card is much better, and sometimes it's the one you want to be summoning first, just because you want to search the Dragonfly. Then if you have another extender on the field or the spell card, then you can just make the B-Trooper link 2, get an extra normal summon, and boom, you already have another normal summon on the field, and then you can summon your Dragonfly. So this card is absolutely amazing. 3 copies of Inzektor Hornet, the main notorious card that everybody knows this deck about. This card just pops your opponent's entire board. You can just use this effect infinitely, and with Dragonfly and Centipede, you can just use these cards so many times throughout a turn that it's not even funny. You can basically pop like 5 or even more cards during a single turn because of the amount of extenders this deck has and the amount of monsters you can special summon on the field. And those monsters that you usually want equipped on other monsters, they still have the effect to equip monsters on themselves. So under some circumstances with Ladybug and some other cards, you can even get some right Xyz monsters on the field by using Hornet as a monster and not as an equip spell, which can come up quite a lot, to be honest. Next up, we have 3 copies of Ladybug. This is the card that you want to be using to manipulate your levels most of the time in order to make bigger Xyz monsters, because otherwise the deck would be kind of restricted on making rank 3 monsters, which would be okay, but now with this card, you can make other levels possible. You can even summon 38 on the field, which is something that you would never think for a level 3 base deck, but because of the Inzektors being able to manipulate their levels so easily, you can make any type of rank monster you want. We have 1 copy of Inzektor Hopper. This card is here just for an extra name, and the effect to attack directly that it gives to a monster it's equipped to can actually clutch you some games, especially during time, but mainly it's just here because you can summon it with your Dragonfly from the deck. It's just another name because it's very easy to run out of monsters, especially if your opponent stops Picofalena, so you can actually get back those monsters from your graveyard into the deck. You need an extra monster because you can summon like 2 centipedes the first time with your Dragonfly, and then if you only have 1 centipede left in your deck and you cannot get back your monsters, then you need to summon something that's better than summoning a Hornet from the deck. So this card is the one that you need to summon, so you can summon 1 centipede and 1 Hopper, so you can keep your plays of equipping Hornet instead of actually summoning into the field. We have 3 copies of Inzektor Giga Mantis. Now the high level monsters are more important than ever, just because of the fact that you want to go first now, and you want to be able to get Dragonfly's effect twice or even more, so you can actually get more monsters on the deck. So being able to pop these cards that can equip themselves from the hand to the monster is very important, because Excalibur used to be the card that did this, but these cards can do it very well. And also their effects to bring back monsters from the graveyard is very important too, because you can just keep spamming a lot more monsters. This deck easily loses to Nibiru, which is what I'm stressing, that it can actually summon that many times and even more right now. So you need to be able to use these cards to get more monsters on the field, and their effects to manipulate stats can actually be really important during a grind game, because the bigger your monsters you have, the more chances you have of winning that grind game. With the same logic, we play 3 copies of Inzektor Giga Weevil. It's basically the same thing as Gigamantis. It just equips itself from your hand to an Inzektor monster, and then if it's destroyed, you can special summon one from the graveyard. Really good card again. You need those equips. For the hand drops, we play 3 copies of Ash Blossom. The good thing about Inzektors is that you don't really want to play like too many variant stuff in the deck. Of course, you can play with Beat Troopers, you can play other extenders, but I think that playing a pure Inzektor deck can actually work better just because it gives you the freedom to play all those hand drops in the deck, because the engine is not as big as any other deck, so you need to play a lot of hand drops in order to be able to back up your plays, especially going second, because pops are not as impactful as they used to be back in the day, so you need to be able to stop your opponent's big plays and then pop what's left on the field so you can actually go for your play. So you need to play quite a few hand drops in a deck like this. So 3 Ash, of course, it's the most generic one and you're going to max it out. We also play 3 copies of Effect Veiler. Aside from Ash, the rest of the hand drops you can basically replace them with anything you want in the main. If you feel like you're playing in a format where they're using a lot of combos, then of course you can main Nibiru, or you can main Droll if they're playing a lot of other decks that search a lot. Of course, everything is up to you. The hand drops are very situational depending on your locals and when you're playing, but I'm just showing you the most generic ones in this profile for the sake of showing you how many hand drops exactly you can fit into this deck. For the spell cards, we have the new card, 3 copies of Zektrike kou-ou. This card is actually really good. First of all, even though it is not an Inzektor card by name, it is always treated as an Inzektor card, which is a huge thing because you can search it with your Centipede, and then its effect is that you can send another Inzektor monster from your hand or face up on the field to the graveyard and use one of 2 effects. Either you use an Inzektor monster from your deck to get it to the field as a monster, or you equip it to an Inzektor monster you control, or you can equip an Inzektor spell card to an Inzektor monster you control. Now, the cool thing about this card is that it actually gives you a way to get more monsters on the field, so it's very easy to summon the Beat Trooper Link 2 to get an extra normal summon. So this card is the second summon, which inherently leads you to a third summon, even if you don't start with Dragonfly on the field, which is very important because it means that you don't need to play insect extenders that other decks play in order to get more monsters on the field so they can get to Link 2s. This card just gives you this ability very easily, and since you can search it with Centipede, it's actually very, very consistent, and the effect to equip spells means that you can use yours like Caliber more consistently. It's a card that you don't really want to search with Centipede, so if you can equip it from the deck, if you don't need to special summon another monster, which is usually what you want to do if you started with Dragonfly, which means that you already have another monster on the field, so you don't really care about special summoning a monster, because if you equip Excalibur and then pop it with Hornet, you're going to get another monster on the field anyway, but you're going to cycle Excalibur, which is going to give you cards back in the graveyard. So this is why this card is actually really, really good for the deck, and I'm so glad that Konami pulled through with this card, because again, like I mentioned, we were kind of skeptical on what kind of card they would make, but they actually made an amazing card for the deck. 3 copies of Inzektor Sork Excalibur. This is a card that you have to absolutely max as well. I've seen people play less than 3, but the thing is, this card, if you combine it with Dragonfly, it's just so good because you can just get back monsters from the graveyard. And again, in the early turns, you get back your Hornet, which doesn't matter too much, but during the late game, getting back monsters from the graveyard is actually really important, especially Giga Mantis and Giga Weevil, so you can equip them to your monsters to make them bigger, so you can run over more stuff if you cannot pop them with Hornet. So yeah, this card, and it also gives 800 attack to the monster it's equipped, so it makes the monster even bigger, so you can easily get monsters with over 3000 attack in the deck without even using your extra deck. So yeah, I would actually max this card out 100% just because of the synergy it has with most of the monsters in the deck. Next up, we have 3 copies of Kun of Ultra Evolution. This is another card that helps you get to Dragonfly. It's very similar to Zektrike, but the thing is that this card requires you to have an equip spell or an equip monster as well, but it's not very difficult because you have 3 Hornets, you have 3 Dragonflies, your Mantis and your Weevil can equip themselves to the hand from the hand, so you can special summon Dragonfly from the deck, and it's a quick play so you can actually dodge Disruption with this card as well, and it also has an effect that during the main phase you can banish it from the graveyard to target an insect monster in your grave, you shuffle it to the deck, and then draw a card. And these recycle effects are actually very important. There's a reason the Inzektor Link monster has a Pot of Avarice type of effect to shuffle back monsters from the graveyard back into the deck, just because this deck needs it. It gets through its monsters, especially the 2 main ones, Dragonfly and Centipede, very, very quickly, so you need to be able to get them back into the deck to summon them again from the deck in order to be able to grind. Otherwise, you just use mainly all your resources during the first turn, so you need to be able to use these kinds of effects, so this is why this card is really, really good. For the one-offs, we have 1 copy of Foolish Burial, of course, sending your Hornet, of course, have your Hornet, you can send your Ladybug, really good card. 1 copy of Monster Reborn. The Inzektor monsters are not hard once per turn, so if you link them away and you bring them back Monster Reborn, you can use their effects again, and you just get more searches and more special summons. And 1 copy of Called by the Grave, because sometimes this is the first special summon. If it gets ashed, it can put an end to your entire turn just because you cannot summon your Beat Trooper Link 2, so you can not get an extra normal summon, so you need to be able to stop that Ash Blossom. And the last card is 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence, rounding out the total hand trap count 9. Of course, I said 3 Ash Blossom is the one you want to be maining 100%, and the rest of the 6 hand traps are up to you. You can play whatever you want. For the extra deck, for the Link monsters, we have 2 copies of Inzektor Pick of Helena. This card is amazing. It's basically what I said about the deck, that this card provides so well. not only does it equip a monster from the deck, but it also allows you to target 3 insects in your graveyard, you shuffle them to the deck, and you draw a card. Being able to shuffle back those centipedes so you can special summon them again from the deck with Dragonfly is crucial, so this is why this card is really good, and also because of the next card that locks you into insect monsters as long as it's on the field, so you need to be able to link it away, and usually you're going to be linking away either this or Seraphy Pampilum, but most of the time Picofelina because you want to get this recycling effect very quickly. And the card I've been talking about is 2 copies of B-Trooper Armor Horn. Now, this card is the one that once you use for the extra normal summon, you need to link it away immediately, otherwise you are not going to be able to get to your big extra deck monsters, because it locks you into insect monsters as long as it's on the field. The effect to give you an extra normal summon is absolutely amazing, because you can get your Centipede, you can get to search for the Dragonfly, if you use your Zektrike, you can summon another monster from the deck, and then you can use these 2 to link away for this, get your extra normal for Dragonfly, get another special, then link away for Picofelina, get your cycling effect going, and you basically see exactly how this deck works. It can spam a lot of monsters as long as its first effects go through. So this is why the choke point of this deck during the combo, it's actually during early in the combo, otherwise if you get a lot of monsters on the field, you don't really mind if one of your latest monsters gets Veilered, because you already have some monsters on the field that doesn't really matter. So this card can actually provide you with those extra monsters, and you can also bring this card back from the graveyard by banishing 3 insect monsters from the grave, so you can actually use this effect again to be able to get another monster on the field, so you can actually give you recovery as well. For the rest of the link monsters, we have 1 copy of Masquerena. You summon 38 in this combo, so it's very easy to protect this card in the battle phase, because Masquerena is always in the card that is very easy to bait by just your opponent normal summoning something and entering the battle phase. But if you have 38 during your combo, then this basically becomes useless because you can redirect the attacks, so this is why Masquerena in this particular deck is much better than most other decks that can summon it. We play the Nightmares, of course, 1 copy of Cerberus, 1 copy of Phoenix, and 1 copy of Unicorn. Yep, of course, these cards are absolutely mandatory. The extra deck is not very tight, so you can kind of cut some of the generic link monsters if you want to play some other specific Xyz monsters or maybe another link monster that you feel like it's necessary. It's not super tight, so you can basically get anything you want with the extra deck and make it work. One of the cards that you have to play, of course, is 1 copy of Sarang Papillon. Now, this card was almost perfect, but the effect that you cannot use both effects during the same turn kind of sucks. But still, it's a really good card because you can use this effect during your opponent's turn to be able to special summon an insect from the graveyard, and also being able to link away your Armor Horn is very important, so you can summon this. Maybe you want to link 3 instead of summoning a Picofelina, or maybe you don't really want to get the cycling effect yet, maybe because you have a Coon, or you cannot special summon that many monsters, but you just want Link Climb. So yeah, this card gives you that option. For the Link 4s, we have, of course, 1 copy of Appaloosa and 1 copy of Access Code. These 2 are pretty standard, I think, for any type of deck that can actually summon them. They're really broken. For the Xyz monsters, the first one is number 3 Cicada King. This is the only rank 3 I'm playing, which is weird because this is a level 3 deck, but like I said, you can manipulate levels very easily, and I think this is the best Link 3 you can summon, basically, because for the rank 3 monsters, just because it can negate. It has an extra interruption, and being an insect actually helps sometimes with Armor Horn. Maybe you don't really want to link away because you know you won't be able to summon another monster from the deck, so if you summon Armor Horn and you have 2 level 3s under it, then you can just Xyz into this and get an extra interruption. We play 1 copy of Evils from Nightmare. In any deck that can summon this card consistently, it can actually be a huge blowout against a lot of decks, especially against combo decks, because having 2 Book of Moons means that your opponent is not going to be able to link away those monsters. So in these days, getting monster Book of Moon basically means that this monster is stuck there and cannot do anything unless your opponent has fusions or something, but you know that if you're not playing against a fusion deck, you shouldn't summon this card. But yeah, this card, against the right matchup, it can be very devastating. Same thing with 1 copy of Abyss Dweller. Of course, well, everybody knows that Dweller against the right matchup is an absolute insta-win, so you're gonna play it. And we play the last monster is the 1 copy of 38, because this card just redirects in the attacks is the most important thing, so you can protect your Masquerena. A Masquerena that can use her effect whenever you want to go for a Unicorn can be very, very deadly, just because you can just make sure that you use your Unicorn whenever you want, instead of using it right away for what your opponent normal summon and try to run over Masquerena. So not only does this card negate spell cards, but it also protects your Masquerena, so it's very, Yep, that's the deck, guys. This deck, I think that it has aged quite well, to be honest. It's one of those old decks that, even to this day, the actual playstyle that it has can actually pull off a lot of good stuff, not only because it pops cards like nothing, but it also being able to special summon all those monsters from the deck, and because, of course, old card design, there's not hard ones per turn in anything in here, so this is why this deck can actually, with the right support that it got right now, can do a lot. So I cannot wait to see what players think about this deck, because we've seen B-Troopers do well, and I'm pretty sure that any type of deck that's quite remotely similar can do that much, so I'm just hoping that someone is going to make this deck work in the competitive scene. So yep, that's the deck, guys. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming content, and we'll see you next time.